two things that I find most people struggle with is number one, a lack of knowledge. So if they're going to make mistakes, it's because you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. So knowledge is valuable. It's the most important thing that we can do is learn. But with the internet having so much information, how do you sift through all of that? And what happens is people start getting overwhelmed and then they can't implement. So step number two, after you've gotten knowledge, is you have to implement it. So what I'm going to share is really an outline on how can you take knowledge, make sure it's good information, and then implement it in a sustainable way. If it's not sustainable, if it's overwhelming, if it's too hard, you're not going to do it. And you're going to go back to your old ways. So if you can follow this format that I'm going to lay out for you, it will make it so much easier to apply to yourselves, to your family, to your four-leggeds. It really is a general principle in life. Okay.
Sounds good. So I know you got a few slides you prepared for us. So if you want, we'll go ahead and dive in there and have you go through that for a bit, and then we can have a conversation around it.
All right. So what we're going to talk about today are health hacks. What is it that we can do for our fur babies that is going to be the low-hanging fruit? What's the most important thing we can start with? And we are what we eat. Well, it applies to our pets as well. They are what they eat as well. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And this is the 5 keys that I use in my practice. Now, I use this if it's an absolutely young, healthy animal and I want to keep them healthy. I'm going to teach my pet owners how to go through this process 1 through 5. Number 6 in my step is doing emotional clearing. And then if it's an animal that is having a health challenge already, this becomes critical. So number 1, we got to stop doing the things that are causing the disease. So you have to stop polluting the body. And we talk about food and water and environment and outside environment and EMF and even the ants that live in our brain, which are the automatic negative thoughts that are creating this negative energy that our animals are in training to. Number 2, we want to make sure that the essential nutrients are there. And we're going to spend some time with this. But an essential nutrient is a nutrient that the body must get from an outside source. You have to eat it because the body cannot produce it in sufficient quantities. With the introduction of all of these toxins that we're dealing with, there are many blockages where the body can't produce something either because it's not in the diet, it's not able to be broken down, or it's not able to be absorbed and utilized. Number 3, healing the leaky gut. I know this audience has spent a lot of time on leaky gut, but I'm going to show you some graphics on what this is going to look like and what we can do about it. And then detoxification, we could spend years talking about detoxification. So not for today. And then supporting the mitochondria so that they're healthier and happier and producing the energy and communication that we need to be able to stay vital. Let's start with species appropriate diet. Now, what I define as a species appropriate diet is the diet that an individual would eat if man didn't intervene. So our dogs and cats are carnivores. A carnivore, by definition, kills another animal and eats it. So not stepping on the toes of vegans and vegetarians. If that's what you as a human decide to eat, that is fantastic. But biologically speaking, our dogs and cats were designed to eat like a carnivore. So let's recap what these action steps are. I started out by saying knowledge is one thing, and then you've got to be able to implement it. Number 1, you have to be feeding your animals a species appropriate diet that is grass-fed, grass-finished. It could be labeled organic, and that's fine, but it doesn't have to be. You know, it's very expensive to create an organic label. But what that means is that that animal was grass-fed and grass-finished, and no other toxins were added. We want to include some kind of fermented foods. Now, I'm already said I'm not a fan of using commercial probiotics. I'm a fan of doing what nature does. When these animals would kill their lunch or dinner, they would have to gut them. So they would, tear through the skin or the fur, and they would take and bite the intestines and disembowel that animal. Sounds kind of gross, but in doing so, they got some of that digested in material into their mouth. And what was that all about? That was all fermented grasses and things that that herbivore was eating that is now loaded with this beautiful fermented microbiome. So when they got that in their mouth, they were replenishing their microbiome. I would venture to say that most of our pet owners are not out there foraging wild animals and feeding the intestinal tract to their pets. Consequently, they're not resupplying that microbiome. They're not feeding that microbiome and helping it to generate. So I like using fermented foods. It could be kefir, which is a fermented milk. It could be cow's milk. It could be goat milk, or it could be sauerkraut. And they don't have to even eat the vegetables. They just need to get the liquid where all of that wonderful bacterial load is. And another cool thing about fermented foods is based on when you made them, the microbiome is going to be a little different. So you're always getting this diversity in there.
We hope you enjoyed this short excerpt from the Health and Healing Club. This entire video, including an in-depth discussion and thoughtful and inspiring questions and answers, is available inside the Health and Healing Club, along with hundreds of hours of premium and exclusive life-changing content, practices, and holistic, natural, and integrative solutions for health and healing. You can start your free trial today at healthandhealingclub.com.